You are now tuned in to the Project 365 experience.
Welcome back, guys, to the Project 365 podcast. I am your host, Coach O. We have a great episode today talking all things NBA free agency and some trades, especially when the NBA free agency period opened up on July 1st. We recorded this episode on Saturday, July 7th, after giving a week for the trades to happen for us to be able to talk about it. I am joined again by my good friend Josué Sédrjo from OnPoint Scouting, and we break down a couple of these trades, what they means. We look at our top 10 moves that we found very important going into the 2024-2025 season. It's an exciting time because the start of the NBA free agency for some teams is the start of the future, right? For them to be able to make moves and try to create a vision for the future of an organization. This year, we're pretty lucked out. If you're a basketball fan, you're pretty lucked out because you have, while this is going to have the NBA free agency happening. Obviously, right now, Summer League is in full swing in Vegas. Not only to mention, like, teams are gearing up for the Olympics that are going to happen in under a month from now. And we had a game that had Team USA showcase game in Vegas versus Team Canada. And it's an exciting time if you're a basketball fan because you have so many different avenues, so many different ways that you can start looking at just the game, and you get the chance to see your favorite athletes in different kinds of environments. Wanted to quickly jump on to break down a trade that we didn't get a chance to talk about because it happened after we finished recording the episode. The big one, the Kings landed DeMar DeRozan in a 3-team sign-in trade. And this is one that Josué and myself, we had on our radar. And just to see it materialize, I wanted to hop on just to be able to talk about it. Here are the details of the trade. DeMar DeRozan heading over to the Sacramento Kings for 3 years and $74 million. Harrison Barnes is heading over to the San Antonio Spurs with a non-protected 2031 pick. And also the Spurs get a first-round pick swap from the Sacramento Kings. So pick swap quite literally just means that the Spurs have the ability to choose between Sacramento's top 2 picks, and they're able to swap picks for that year. And Chris Duarte, very young player, played at the University of Oregon. We saw him really start shining in the Indiana Pacers system. It's a player that definitely has a lot of potential, fought a lot of injuries, but he heads over to Chicago, and that is going to be for Chicago gets Chris Duarte, 2 second-round picks, and some cash considerations. So I just want to break down this trade. Obviously, the biggest thing is DeMar DeRozan heading over to the Kings. The Kings get the 6-time All-Star and one of the best one-on-one isolation scorers to join their team, to now be able to partner up with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. It's very exciting if you're a Kings fan, because if you're looking at the Kings style of play, the Kings are a team that love to play up and down. But now they have a presence that they could throw the ball to when the game gets a bit chaotic, even in the half court, when we know in the playoffs things slow down. The Kings are trying to make that push. So for them to get DeMar DeRozan, for them to have someone that they could throw the ball to in the post, score at a high level. He's been one of the best isolation scorers. Averaged 21 points for his whole NBA career. He's a very capable scorer. So adding that to Sacramento gives them another dimension for them to attack players, because, you really felt that when teams started figuring out the De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis two-man game was when they really struggled. Sacramento has a lot of young players, really good young players. You're looking at what kind of firepower they could have going into next year. Malik Monk, which we talked about in our podcast today, being able to sign long term, feeling the fit. We know what kind of scoring he can give off the bench. And you're looking at other players like Keegan Murray as well, who's proved to be one of the best catch and shoot 3-point shooters in the game. So you pair that up with someone that's able to put pressure in transition as soon as he rebounds the ball, and De'Aaron Fox, who's able to literally take 3 dribbles and from one court to the other, from one side of the court to the other. And you're looking at Domantas Sabonis, who's a really good release kind of big that's able to make plays, that's able to pass, that's able to rebound. You have to be very excited if you're a Kings fan, because you now have added someone who you can throw the ball to, and you can almost rely on him to be able to go score and create something for the rest of the team, right? DeMar DeRozan obviously is from Los Angeles, Compton, so was very lucky to see him spend a lot of time with the Raptors, and now he gets to go back home. So from that personal aspect, very happy for DeMar DeRozan. The other side of it, Harrison Barnes joining unanimous Rookie of the Year, Victor Wembanyama, with the Spurs, and obviously one of the greatest point guards of all time, which we talked about again in this trade, in this episode with Chris Paul. It's you're surrounding Victor with capable pieces that are going to help accelerate his growth, and I think that's what the Spurs really want to do. Harrison Barnes has been someone that is able to play off of people. We saw it, just recently. We saw it with Sacramento, him playing off of De'Aaron Fox, him being able to play off of Sabonis, right? Well, now you get the chance to play as a off-ball player around a Chris Paul, Victor Wembanyama pick and roll. It doesn't get better than that. Harrison Barnes has been really good at shooting the three for his career. He's someone that makes really good decisions as a secondary decision maker, right? He attacks closeouts really well. So you have to be excited of the fit, because it's someone that has the potential to fit seamlessly with what the Spurs are trying to do for the near future, but also help Victor, who already is showing signs. It's also helped Victor continue to progress the way that he is in the NBA. Chris Duarte is a player that I like a lot. Chicago gets him, and very interested in seeing the pairing of Chris Duarte and Josh Giddey in the backcourt, right? Josh Giddey, as we know, was a player that was with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oklahoma City decided to part ways because what we saw in last playoff, when OKC was trying to do this playoff push, Josh Giddey was not a consistent threat off the ball, and he's also a very good playmaking guy, right? So the spacing issues that were being caused, especially going into, you're looking at a team like OKC that's trying to take the next step. A lot of spacing issues when you have someone that is that other teams are going to treat as a non-shooter, right? Not as much space for Shea to be able to operate. We know Shet is able to attack closeouts in some situations. So having that secondary defender in the lane doesn't really help the overall offense of Oklahoma City. So they decided to part ways. And Josh Giddey gets a fresh start in Chicago, where he's probably going to be seen as the starting guard. So that's an exciting one to see. But you pair him with Chris Duarte, who is a very solid player. He came into the NBA a little bit older as a rookie. But for him to be able to be paired next to Josh Giddey with his shooting ability, with him being able to be a secondary decision maker, it's exciting to see two young guards with potential to play on the same backcourt. So that one will be an interesting one to see. All in all, that was the big one. We were very excited for this episode. We had prepared. We broke down our top 10 moves that we think that we should be on the lookout for. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Just to put a couple of things on your radar, I was able to join Canada's court this week on the podcast. I will link it in the bio to talk NBA free agency with the Toronto Raptors. It's always a pleasure when I get to hop on Canada's court with my good friend Phil Dross, and we just talk and break down what we think is in the future for the Toronto Raptors. We have a lot of good things that are going to come up. Obviously, potentially a summer league recap, and obviously the Olympics. So it's an exciting time for basketball. If you haven't subscribed, we appreciate you just giving, sharing, and just the support overall. It is amazing that we are able to provide you guys with this content, and it helps people learn more about the game that we love, the game that we're around every day. So if you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to please do. If you have shared or liked the video, thank you, thank you, thank you. And hopefully we can continue providing you guys with the value that helps. So without any further ado, let's hop into our episode. Let's talk NBA free agency, trades with my good friend, Josué Sédrjo. Welcome back to another episode of the Project 365 podcast, free agency special. Very excited because the NBA never sleeps. And again, joined with our expert in all things free agency and all things just contracts. We have Josué Sédrjo who's going to join us. Josué, how you doing?
Doing well. Far too kind calling me an expert just yet. After all, I didn't write the collective bargaining agreement myself. I think those would be the real geniuses. There's actually an interesting conversation to be had on another podcast and even off air about whether or not the rules being so complicated and having even more levels to it now than ever before, whether that's good or not for general fan interest in the NBA. But that's another conversation for a different podcast.
Absolutely. This is also the time of the year where so much is happening in the NBA. It would have been too much for us to try to cover everything. So what we are going to do is we're going to look at 10 significant moves that happen in the NBA. And we're going to break it down to different sections. We're going to have our free agent signings. We have our veterans getting extensions on their contracts. And then we're also going to look at some trades. But we're not going to waste any time. We're going to go straight into our free agent signing. Number one that we're going to look at is definitely LeBron James signing this 2-year, $104 million with a player option. Josué, I'd definitely love for you to be able to break this down, but also for our audience, difference between player option, team option, all the little intricacies that a player contract may have.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned it. A player option is it is what the title says. It's the option for the player to either continue with his current contract or decline and decide to enter the free agent market. So in this situation, LeBron James did what he's done for quite a bit of time now, setting short-term deals where he controls the destiny of his own destiny at all times. The timing in which he signs deals precludes him from being traded, in addition to having a player option, meaning if he, for whatever reason, felt that he can't maximize his value as a free agent in the open market, he would have the option to continue his contract by opting in to a second year. I don't think there's any surprise in him staying in LA, regardless what you felt the impact of their draft decision was. I think Los Angeles was always going to be the most likely scenario, especially when with the hiring of a new coach, the continued emphasis of Anthony Davis as the future of the franchise, and I think the family fit and optimizing what that roster looks like. I think he's willing and excited for the challenge.
So we are gonna go into our second free agent signing that I found was very interesting. Paul George signing with the Philadelphia 76ers, 4-year, $212 million with a player option as well. This one is interesting, Jose, because I kind of, in a weird way, felt because we knew that LeBron was very likely to sign. It was going to sign it. I found that this was like the first domino to find. So the first domino to fall down and get our free agency starting. So what do we think about this one? I really like the fit of Paul George's ability to play alongside Joel Embiid.
I mean, I think at this point thus far, he's been the most significant player to change teams. We through our 10 moves in this offseason that we're covering in this episode, we're going to be looking at guys who have re-signed and also have changed teams. If we're just focusing on the guys who have changed teams, I think there's a strong argument to be made that he's the biggest one. The fit is clean, like you said. You have Tyrese Maxey on the ball. You have Joel Embiid in the post. You have Tyrese Maxey to initiate. You have Joel Embiid for all the post-up and defensive big responsibility. And then you have Paul George doing all this stuff in between, whether it's shooting off the catch that he excels or defending the best perimeter opponents in the Eastern Conference, which there are plenty between Donovan Mitchell, Paolo Banchero, the Celtics guys, the Knicks guys. He's going to have his hands full, and he certainly was somebody that the Sixers needed in that archetype. The question is going to be the health, whether it's for him, whether it's for Joel Embiid, whether it's for even some of the role players, whether it's Kelly Oubre, for example. I know they're shooting power forward. His name escapes me, but he also has had injuries. So with that team, the health is going to be the emphasis to see how do they look in September and how do they look in April, and at that time, how are they ready to battle the gauntlet of the Eastern Conference?
This one will be interesting because I think in terms of mindset, when you switch teams, you sign a big contract and all that, like what kind of mindset is Paul George going to go into in this situation, right? We were both talking going into this. We were both talking before we started recording, and is he going to go into it thinking, okay, this is me, like this is my team, I got to prove something? Or is he going to kind of like be okay with being like the third option going to the team? I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't know what you think.
I mean, second and third, I don't think there's any question it's quote unquote Joel Embiid's team. How much those guys care about that will determine a long way how good the team chemistry is. At the end of the day, they're going to have their hands full because it's just by sheer numbers. Celtics, 1, Bucks, 2, Knicks, 3. I'll throw in Pacers, 4, and I'm surely forgetting somebody. Guessing Cavs.
Maybe Cleveland. Yeah.
Cavs 5. So right there, you're guaranteed to get one of those by sheer numbers, one of those guys in the first round. So it's gonna by how many teams, good teams are in the Eastern Conference, you have to be ready to go round 1. So let's see.
Going to our third signing, free agent signing, we got Klay Thompson, who signed with the Dallas Mavericks, 3-year, $50 million player option. Dallas was one of the teams that we got the chance to just do a bit of our podcast work in, looking at the NBA Finals. So we really got a chance to dissect what Dallas really needed, what they were lacking. We got a chance to really look at that. So how do we like the fit of Klay Thompson going into the Mavericks, play alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving?
So they trade Tim Hardaway Jr. to the Detroit Pistons early in the offseason. They sign Klay. It's the clear replacement, in their mind, a clear upgrade. There's no question about that. How he's going to fit, it goes without saying that strong side, Kyrie with the ball, weak side with Luka with the ball. Your gravity is going to be through the roof. You're just going to have to account him you're going to have to account for him at all times. The question's going to be, if he's on the court with those guys to close lineups defensively, what does that look like? Yeah, he's not the player that he was in his heydays in Golden State because of injuries. How much mobility does he have? Can he guard up a position at all? Can he, operate as a guard some fours somehow? Can he be effective in a switching scheme? Like, he almost, part of the reason, and this is me reading into the situation, part of the reason I think he left is that he couldn't find a way to reinvent himself within his current, or well, at this time, old team that was like his creation. Like, he's just as integral part of what the Warriors built as Steph and Draymond. And he couldn't, because of injuries, he had to reinvent himself. He just couldn't quite figure it out. So now going to Dallas is like, that's the chance to reinvent himself. And what does that look like? We'll see. It's a matter of health. It's a matter of role, because the fit is clean, especially on offense.
Yeah. Looking more into the signing, I think if you're just looking at the skill set, it's a clear fit. Skill set. We're talking about skill set. You're talking about Klay Thompson, who is arguably seen as like him and Steph Curry are like top two best shooters of all time, give or take. I think what I find very interesting with this fit is when we're looking at what the Dallas Mavericks kind of lacked a little bit in the NBA Finals this year. We think about all these above the break threes that PJ Washington was taking, right? I think if you take away some of those threes and don't put that much pressure on PJ Washington to have to make those, and maybe those threes go to Klay Thompson, maybe we're talking about a different kind of series.
That
right?
is certainly part of the calculus, without question. Without question.
No, I like it. Okay, so this is, in my opinion, my sleeper. We're going to go to our fourth. This, I think, is one of my sleeper signing. We got Isaiah Hartenstein, who signs with the OKC Thunder, 3-year, $87 million plus team option. I want you to break down the contract, but also break down the fit.
So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I don't think it's under the radar. I think it's way over the radar, simply because he answers so many of the needs that had identified through their playoff run, which was rebounding, short roll action, as well as just being solid defensively. What is interesting and worthy of note from his contract is that he signed a 3-year deal with a team option on the third year, like you talked about. The team option is now the same concept as the player option, but the decision now lies with the team instead of the player. So the team can decide after the second year, okay, we're going to activate this team option so that the player stays with the team under the third year of his contract, or we're going to decline it, and now the player enters free agency. The way their contract structure works, Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams, their first year of their rookie extension, which at this point looks likely to be a max rookie extension, is going to be on that third year of Isaiah Hartenstein's contract. So in order for the team to be able to operate somewhat under the second apron, which is a CBA concept that I'm sure everybody has heard about, that I'm sure we'll have the ability to dive in future episodes. But it basically relates to team flexibility and team's ability to build a competitive roster under a certain threshold. And because the Thunder have a team option that third year, the Thunder can look to the future and be like, our contracts are not going to get out of whack, and we're still going to have the ability and the flexibility to build a competitive roster built around our young guys with quality role players for a foreseeable future.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're looking at kind of like a situation where the Thunder are saying, we're going for the championship next year. We want to be good for, we're filling a need that we have. So we're going to give Isaiah more money now, but also the option to be able to say, okay, in the fourth year, reevaluate what is happening.
In this case, the third year.
In theory, yeah. In the third year.
But you're absolutely right. This guy helps us win right now. We still retain flexibility for the future. And I'm going to go a step further. If in a year we feel like we are one big piece away, one big trade away from actually winning the championship, or yet again sustaining a championship that's won and attempting to win multiple, he's going to be a valuable trade chip, and his salary is going to be so high that they're going to be able to get in the dance for quote unquote superstars, high price, high salary players. So yeah, it's a no brainer from their standpoint, and he's going to be a really good fit with their offense. A guy that played in their system in the G League, a few years back. So they've had all the intel on this guy. They've known about him for quite a while. So it's he answers a lot of needs that they had going to the offseason.
It's especially looking at the Thunder. You're talking about a team that gets that opportunity to be able to move on. They want to play. They want to like shed skill set. We saw what they really struggle with was defending the interior. So adding somebody like that, that's a really good player off the ball, that doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hand, could do a lot of good things in terms of screening, in terms of fitting with their person. I think it's very interesting. But also you're looking at a team that also added Alex Caruso, which is another one of those where we were looking, and this is a team, again, going back to what we said, they're trying to win right now. So really looking at what is happening in OKC. KCP signing with Orlando, 3 years, $66 million player option, right? What do we think about this?
Yeah, I mean, Condavious Caldwell-Pope has established himself as a quality starter for a few years now. First, I think towards the end of his time in Detroit, you knew that, okay, this guy with, better shot creators around him would be really valuable. Showed it with the Lakers, certainly showed it in Denver. It's equally as big of a loss for the Nuggets as it is a gain for the Magic. I think the Minnesota series showed that he had trouble staying with Anthony Edwards, and I think it painted him in the light that, like, oh, wow, he's taking a step back because he can't hang with Anthony Edwards defensively. I mean, that's true to a certain extent, solely because of age, but Anthony Edwards is also an absolute beast offensively to take care of, and he's just not the best type of matchups for KCP specifically, but he's still good enough defensively and smart enough defensively to still have an impact. And going to a young team like the Magic, who already their guard pressure was suffocating, he's going to fit in like a glove and give a ton of help in a Eastern Conference, like I mentioned earlier, that is lined up to be a gauntlet. And for that team that lost in Game 7 to a Cleveland Cavaliers team that I think we're better than them, but I also think they had an opportunity to take that series. There's no question in their mind. They're thinking, we got to win a playoff series this year.
Yeah. And especially going into a situation where you're going to play off the ball is going to be in Franz and Paolo Banchero's hand, right? So you're also looking at someone that, gets that opportunity to just be able to, one, help the younger guys, right? I think one theme that I saw in this draft is there's a lot of mentorship potentially that's going on. But, somebody that's able to make those reads, play off the ball, and he plays bigger. One thing I really appreciate about KCP, gets a chance to win 2 rings, but he's always played bigger than what he is. And I found that that's very something that could fit in any system. Okay, this is the big one. In terms of mentorship, you're looking at CP3 signing 1 year, $11 million with the Spurs. How interesting is a pairing of one of the best point guards of all time with one of the best prospects of all time?
I mean, the only thing I care about is the interview, let's say like December 20th or December 27th, around that time, where they ask Chris Paul, who's easier to throw lobs to, Victor or Blake Griffin? Like, after half a season, like you tell us, because that's literally 2 of the best lob targets that ever existed in the history of the NBA. Yeah, I mean, the fit is so clean, so easy, right? Like the guy that is nicknamed the point guard paired with the guy that's the tallest and most likely to be a superstar for the next 20 years. I mean, it goes without saying. I do think it's important to notice that Chris Paul has taken a step back from a lane attack standpoint and ability to get past the initial point of attack defender. But in terms of organizing a young team and the synergy he's going to have with Greg Popovich, I mean, it's going to go above and beyond what happens on the court. And for a young team and a young man, a young superstar that I think they're going to find they have a similar mindset from a competitive standpoint, over my dead body type of attitude. I think the benefits are going to go beyond what happens this season, no matter how good the Spurs are. And for Victor specifically, I think he's going to benefit from that experience for the rest of his career.
And then we have Malik Monk signing a free agent signing, 4 years, 79 million with a player option from Sacramento. What surprised you about this deal?
I mean, the value. For me, this guy's a clear above average starter. I mean, we just talked about KCP getting 22 million. 22 million is about the value in this new NBA of an average starter. I thought that would be quite clearly available for Monk on the open market. But it's important to notice here and to acknowledge that this has been the best situation he's had in his career. He's playing with his best friend, De'Aaron Fox, going back to college. He's playing with their coach, Mike Brown, who certainly believes in him. He's been a part of this renaissance with the Kings. Basically, this man is happy. And there's a known proverb that says, don't blank, blank, expletive, mess with happy. And I think that's the decision that Monk took here. That was the maximum amount of money under the CBA that the Kings could offer him. I think that's important to note from a respect standpoint, from expressing monetarily our desire to keep you as a team. Like if you go to a free agent and you say, hey man, we want to keep you, but this is as much as we can do, but we're going to give you as much as we can. The player option in the third year, like that's a deciding factor, right? So you pair those two things together, and that's why he stays in Sacramento. And they're going to be aggressive this offseason and moving forward. I think they're trying to build a competitive team, a team that can seriously win at the very least a playoff round next year. And he's going to have, I mean, he took some big steps in playmaking last year. He's going to have an ability to continue those steps and help drive winning in that city.
Malik Monk also was one of the best, had amazing production numbers off the bench. So that was something that really helped Sacramento just overall. You're looking at for our veteran extension. We had one signing that I think we really wanted to focus on as we shift categories. We're going to Donovan Mitchell, signing an extension of 3-year, 150+ player option to stay with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Listen, the Cavaliers, there was a lot of questions. Are they playing too many bigs? Are they switching? They've kept all of their core pieces together as of now, right? So you have to think that right now the vision is to keep this group a little bit longer moving forward, especially with a new coach coming in, with Kenny Atkinson.
So let's examine a few things here. So first of all, Donovan Mitchell had 1 year left on his deal. By signing a 3-year extension, but having a player option on the last year, really what he's doing is he's delaying this conversation for another 18 months, right? So he's saying, I'm going to be here for another year. I'm going to play on the first year of my extension. And then at that time, I have the ability, I'm going to note here, the ability to have 1 year left on my deal after 2 years from today. Right. So what he's really committing here to is 2 years with this core, with this group, and trying to figure it out and win at the highest level. They hired Cam Atkinson. He spent time with the Warriors recently. They won the championship in a system where they were starting Kevon Looney and Draymond Green. Right. So again, two bigs. I think there's no question that Evan Mobley has a ton of potential. I think there's a step for him to take offensively. Between Mitchell finding the comfort with Darius Garland, between Cam Atkinson figuring out how to unlock Evan Mobley's offense, those dominoes and that dynamic is going to determine the Cavaliers' upside in the midterm. I'm not going to say short term because, I think it's important to note that I see this as a 2-year project. I mean, Atkinson coached Jared Allen back in Brooklyn. He values him a ton. I know there's been some rumors that Allen might be on the trade block. I don't think, again, reading from the outside, I don't think Atkinson would have taken the job if it wasn't made clear to him that Allen is a part of the solution. And I think we're going to be able to evaluate results within the next 18 months to 2 years, evaluate them conclusively.
So that's 8 moves that we have. We're going to go into 2 trades that we saw was very, we think have potential for us to be talking about for next year. The move that shook the whole basketball world at 10 p.m. East Coast time. Mikal Bridges reuniting. There was a trade that happened between the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks. Mikal Bridges heading to New York for 5 first-round picks, 4 of them were unprotected. What was your first thought when you saw this trade? Like, I know I was shocked. I was like, what's happening?
Well, first of all, my first thought was, I'm not going to bed anytime soon. I have to understand everything that's going on here. My second thought was, honestly, a little mad at myself. I should have seen this coming. I just didn't really believe the Nets would turn around and trade their best player to the Knicks from a, brand
Proximity.
awareness standpoint,
And proximity.
brand
Mhm.
awareness standpoint, where they were at in their team building exercise. But then when you look at the value, I mean, it made sense on both parts, right? From a Knicks standpoint, you can look at it and be like 5 firsts for Mikal Bridges. I mean, this guy's never been an all-star. He's not even a max player. With max player is not really it doesn't mean all that much, but for context, like most guys that you would trade 5 firsts for are at the very least a max player. But the fit is so clean in New York. I mean, between him and OG Anunoby, the Knicks are turning around and looking at the Celtics and saying, we're going to look at you eye in the eye and say, for every Jaylen Brown test and quiz, we have an answer. For every Jason Tatum quiz, we have an answer. And that for them is as valuable as 5 first-round picks. Now, the question is going to be the health. Now, they went through it in this playoff run. Moving forward, it's going to come back again. And I think if they find a way to get some kind of center depth to replace most of what Hartenstein brought to the table, defensively, at the very least, I don't know offensively, but defensively, they can absolutely compete with the Celtics. No question in my mind. They can cause them a lot of problems. Question's going to be, offensively, is Mikal Bridges the upgrade on the wing significant enough that when Jason Tatum's going off, and Jalen Brunson is kind of iffy or doesn't really have it going on, and Julius is, maybe the jump shot today isn't really going. Maybe he's not able to draw fouls. Can we turn to Mikal and be like, oh, man, it's your time? Right? And if the answer is yes, the Knicks can go to the NBA Finals, and they might have a chance to win the NBA Finals. If the answer is no, this is a very good team, the chance to go to the conference finals, but maybe one step below championship contention.
I agree with you. I think there's definitely a lot of potential there. You're also reuniting. There's 4 of these guys that played in college together. You're talking about DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and Mikal, right? So just in terms of, I think now we're getting to an NBA where it's important to think about the cohesiveness of the pieces, right? And I think team chemistry is becoming a thing. We left the era of just the big threes and all that. I think the NBA season is so long and there's so many ups and downs. I think there's definitely value in having people that have familiarity with each other. And that's why I think I kind of give them the advantage. But I agree with you. I think the first thing that what I saw from this, and when I saw them lose Hartenstein, I was like, there's definitely that void there. So in terms of positioning as a 5, does that put the pressure back on Mitchell Robinson?
Of course it does.
Right?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
I mean, between that, they're still going to be looking at resigning Precious Achiuwa.
Precious too.
But again, we are in July here, right? Like the trade deadline's in February. They have a good 6 months to evaluate the team and understand and see what it looks like. I mean, we talk about injuries. I mean, Kristaps Porzingis, we talked about it in our NBA Finals pod when he was going through his injury. I mean, he not only did he have to get surgery, he's going to be out for 6 months, right? So you don't know what your biggest contender and the team that you're building up to match up in the playoffs. You don't even know what they're going to look like at that point, health-wise. So a lot of things can change, and you don't build a champion just in July. You build it throughout the rest of the season.
Right. So what does that mean for Brooklyn? Brooklyn's going into the full rebuild mode. Give all the shots to Cam Thomas. If there's a over on Cam Thomas's shot, you got to go over it.
For all our gambling friends, it goes without saying. I mean, this move for the Nets was paired with reacquiring control of 2 of their first round picks from the Rockets as well. So now, as they are most likely not going to perform at a very, very high level, they're going to control their own pick, right? So the ability to draft, whether it's a Cooper Flag, a VJ Edgecombe, a Nolan Traore, whoever it is that's going to be the first overall pick at that time. Not only they're going to have that chance, they're going to have control over a lot of Dallas Mavericks picks, over some Phoenix Suns picks, and now the New York Knicks picks, right? So when you're looking forward in terms of rebuilding, the total tally on the trade of Kevin Durant is 9 first-round picks. I mean, from an asset standpoint, it's a very good job by Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm. Our second pick, our second trade that we're looking at is Atlanta putting the end to the Trae Young DeJounte Murray experiment. DeJounte Murray gets traded to New Orleans, and Atlanta gets Larry Nance, Dyson Daniels, and 2 first-round picks. What do we think about this trade?
I think of it as incomplete, simply because I feel like for both teams, it's like the first of
Right, there's something happening right after. Yeah.
multiple of other
Mhm.
stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Right. So if we look at it from Atlanta's standpoint, right, like that clear to me is saying, okay, we don't think this partnership is gonna bring us to another level, and then we don't think if we want to take a step back, we can do that with both of those players on that team. And we're looking at this value trade wise, and we're thinking, okay, it's pretty good. I mean, 2 first-round picks are not completely unprotected, but it's still pretty good. So we have the ability to retool at the very least using those picks. Dyson Daniels is a good young player. He's going to have the ability to defend on the ball, whether as a starter or coming off the bench. And then Larry Nance is just a good vet, good for our culture. Whether again we are trying to build up or we're trying to go in more of a retooling direction. It's incomplete for Atlanta because I don't know what that means, whether we feel like we need to keep Trae Young and we just need to build in a different way around him, or this is the first step towards a Trae Young trade. So that's why it's incomplete, to be determined. From New Orleans side, right now the backcourt is DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum together. I'm not sure that is the most optimal defensive backcourt if you're trying to win multiple rounds in the Western Conference, which is clearly their stated goal. So then at that point, if the answer is yes, then I would point to the salaries and go and look between DeJounte, CJ McCollum, Zion Williamson, and Brandon Ingram and say, in this current CBA, 4 high-priced salaries is very, very, very unlikely and hard to do if you're going to field a competitive team. So now, does that mean Brandon Ingram is on the trading block? Is there another move to come? I don't think it would be CJ McCollum because of the value to his veteran leadership and his experience. But then again, from a backcourt standpoint, do they look around in January and say, I'm not sure this is the right fit? So I feel, again, there's more moves to come. So it's from a value standpoint, I think it makes sense on both parts. From a overall team philosophy, incomplete. Let's see what happens.
And there's so much time. Like you said, the teams have until February to shape up what they want going into the end of the 2025 season. But there's definitely for sure going to be different things. Those were our 10 significant moves. But are there some other situations that you are looking at that haven't potentially happened yet as we are recording this on July 6th? Nothing else has really happened. Like, what are you kind of like, are there some moves that you're kind of like keeping an eye out for?
I mean, there's been quite a bit of role players that we haven't touched on that have signed deals or been traded since the beginning of the summer. But for me, the guy that I'm keeping an eye on is Lauri Markkanen, whether the Jazz decide to trade him or not. I think Danny Ainge looked at the value that the Knicks got from Mikal Bridges and thought to himself, I would like to get some of that. So let's see if is he able to get just as much, or B, if he decides not to do so, what do the Jazz do from a building standpoint, right? Like they control a lot of picks from Minnesota, a few from the Thunder, a few from the Nuggets. What do they decide to do moving forward? What about yourself? What's one move or one guy you have an eye on?
We were talking about just the potential. Like from reports, it seems like DeMar DeRozan has played his last game with the Bulls. From reports, I'm making air quotes, but I think that's definitely somebody that at his stage of career has to go somewhere where, it's got to be a contending team. He has to go in a situation that's going to be a fit. I think that'll be an interesting one. I don't know how, in terms of a contract, how that would look like. I don't know if there's certain ways that you think potentially something like that could happen.
I mean, it depends on whether he
mm.
goes to a cap space team. Does he go there as a sign and trade? There's a few factors at play. Does he just decide to take a non-taxpayer mid-level exception? There's a few different options, but if I were him, I wouldn't leave a cent on the table as much as I can. That I would say that.
Yeah. No, this was just us looking into it. On again, we're recording this on July 6th, and so much more can happen. Just anything else? I think we hit on some good moves that are probably going to shake up what we're looking at going into the 2025 season.
I mean, it's certainly we've touched on the. I mean, 10 of the most. There's been so many moves. 10 of the most significant moves since the NBA draft. And I think we're starting to have a picture shape up in both conferences in terms of who's going to be a serious contender for the NBA championship and who's more of a pretender, who's a serious contender for the playoffs, who's a pretender for the playoffs. But I mean, I remember, the Kyrie Irving trade was mid-August. I remember, last year, like LeBron James didn't decide not to sign his extension with the Lakers until the first week of August. There's the Olympics at play. In other words, there's still a lot of runaway before the season even starts, let alone the December guaranteed at the beginning of the unfreeze for trade of guys that have resigned, let alone the trade deadline. So a lot of runway for the team for all the teams, but for everybody that is playing for their jobs or playing for let's say to get themselves out of an uncomfortable spot, I think the beginning of the season is everything. So for some of these teams, you actually want to do all your shopping in the off season so that you're ready to go in October.
I'm keeping my eye out for what's going to happen in the Western Conference. The Western Conference is becoming a gauntlet now, eh? I remember,
yeah.
we spoke about it, and we were saying like there's legitimately 13 teams in the Western Conference right now that are looking to take that next step.
Well, they're looking to make the playoff. Like if they don't make the playoffs, I think they would be disappointed. 13. I mean, we're including the Spurs in there. I don't know that they would be disappointed, but if they have an opportunity and they don't make it, like let's say they're 35-35, after 70 games, 12 games left, you're 500, you're in fighting distance chance of the play-in, and they don't make it, like I think they'd be disappointed. That's 13. Like that's a lot of pressure on a lot of different organization, and that's just to make the playoffs, let alone winning a round, let alone winning the championship. So it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be an absolute gauntlet the entire season. I would say making the playoffs in the Western Conference and then making the finals in the Eastern Conference. Even if I think at this time the Celtics are clear favorites, it's not going to be an easy road. I don't want to rehash their current playoff run, whether it was easy or not, because I think it's irrelevant. But I know for a fact right now, I mean, they're looking at the Eastern Conference and be like, hey, we better play our A game from the jump.
It'll be interesting for us to see. We'll definitely keep our eyes out for any more moving pieces. Josué Sédrjo, always a pleasure. And looking forward to always eventful NBA offseason.
Can't wait to break the next moves.